Lowkey. Welcome to the mother of all talk shows. I don't know if you heard my introduction, my monologue, Karim, but the point I was trying to make is that a ceasefire is not enough. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I feel that pushing this slogan of a ceasefire from the beginning, while I understand how that happened, George, it was essentially working to obscure what is the British and US role in Israel's war in the region. They act as a trilateral security state. Britain has been sending arms, it has been sharing intelligence, it has a key logistics role in this war. The US, it's been revealed by The Intercept, even sent Air Force officers to help with targeting for the Israeli fighter jets. We know obviously Canada, Germany, Britain and the US are the biggest seller of arms to the Israelis in this war. So really, we have to have a clarity. There are mechanisms within the region to fight for independence against these powers, and it's important that those forces are given support and people understand the equation that we stand in front of at this time.
A ceasefire is necessary, but not sufficient. And of course, sufficiently insufficient that it's a guarantee that all of this will happen all over again, as it has happened so often, even just in the 21st century, never mind going back the full 75 years.
Absolutely. And we know how Israel behaves in all of these situations. You cannot trust a single promise that Israel gives. Many of the prisoners that were released in the prisoner swap in the first few times where there were calm, there was a form of truce, and these people were released, Israel has rearrested many of them. Even during the phase when they were releasing these captives, these Palestinian captives in Israeli jails, they were arresting a larger number of the people that they released. So we really can't trust anything that Israel promises during these times either.
And indeed, the rampage has stepped up in the West Bank. Their crimes
Absolutely.
Over the border in Lebanon. There's nobody talking about a ceasefire in the West Bank. Nobody talking about a ceasefire against the villagers being bombed and strafed in Lebanon.
Absolutely. And this is the nature of what Israel is aiming to do with the region. There are several forthcoming wars that will be launched. One of them will be over Al-Aqsa. Israel has been funding organizations with the stated objective of demolishing Al-Aqsa and replacing it with a temple that these particular Zionist fanatics believe to have existed twice in the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. We know that that's going to be a particularly serious confrontation will be caused by that action, and Israel is absolutely clear that it will carry that out. When you look at the way that these organizations have become entrenched within the state apparatus. It's even offered now, an Israeli army investigation found, for women who do not want to take part in conscription to become members of this organization, the Temple Institute, as an alternative. That's by the Israeli political entity. What you also have is no doubt the war with Lebanon, because of course you are dealing with a very different enemy in Hezbollah. You are talking about a very well-armed, very well-trained, very well-organized machine that Israel is determined to knock out. And in order to pursue that aim, it will, of course, implicate Britain and the United States even more in its work in the region.
Now, Joe Biden, in retaliation for the death of 3 American soldiers posted in the deserts near the Jordanian border, but indisputably in Syria, Joe Biden launched another blizzard of ordnance against at least two countries. I'm not sure if Lebanon got any of it, but Iraq and Syria were heavily bombed by the United States. And it is alleged, the Jordanians deny it, that the Jordanian Air Force also flew on the raids attacking targets in Iraq. And Iraq has reportedly retaliated by stopping subsidized petrol fuel going from Iraq to Jordan. Tell us your understanding of what happened and its likely impact.
Well, ultimately, George, you have two key axes in the region. You have the axis of resistance and you have the axis of assistance. Now, the axis of resistance, it spans across Yemen, Palestine, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria also. In the axis of assistance, what you have is the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and you've seen that axis of assistance be active in this war from the very beginning. So during the Islamic Arab Summit in Riyadh, you had a draft proposal for an oil embargo and a restriction on the US using the airspace of Arab states to deliver weaponry to Israel. Now, the only states that voted against it were the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia. You also have the way in which the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan have worked to provide a land bridge taking goods to the Zionist entity throughout this genocide of Gaza to find a way to circumvent the Yemeni blockade of the port of Eilat. What you also have is Elbit Systems setting up shop. This is Israel's largest arms company in not only the UAE, where it has the Elbit Systems Emirates subsidiary, but also in Morocco too, where it's been announced an Israeli intelligence base will be built quite close to the border with Algeria. Now, a UAE state-owned corporation by the name of Edge Group has invested $15 million in the Israeli drone manufacturer Highlander Aviation. Now, Highlander Aviation's technology is used to manage the Israeli airspace. What we also know is that both Saudi security agencies and Emirati security agencies have used Israeli intelligence firms like the NSO Group and Celebrite to spy on people and hack the phones of even their own citizens throughout the last decade. And in fact, the UAE deal with Celebrite, which actually hacks phones for the British police also, was brokered by the former head of Israel's external intelligence agency, Mossad. What we also know is that the Saudi-backed Affinity Partners hedge fund, which is led by Jared Kushner, owns a stake in the Israeli vehicle company, the Shlomo Group. Now, according to the Shlomo Group, they have provided Israeli military units, the Shaudag and Maglan units, with vehicles and military equipment since October 7th. That's right, Saudi money in this hedge fund has been used in the procurement of equipment for the Israeli military throughout this war. So the choice is very clear for people in the region. You have the axis of resistance, and you have the axis of assistance. Where do you stand?
Yes, and some surprising people find it surprisingly difficult to make that dichotomy work and to make the right choice in that dichotomy for all kinds of reasons, sectarian and otherwise. But what was the effect of what Biden did? Did the attacks on Syria and Iraq achieve anything in your view?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, it has strengthened the resolve of the groups in Iraq and Yemen. For example, you have had literally Yemeni citizens filming the US bombing of their country and commenting on it while watching from a stone's throw away, saying, even if you burn the whole of Sana'a, we are with Gaza, with Gaza. So this is the overriding feeling within the region in a way it never has been before. There is a greater clarity about who the enemy is. And ultimately, the United States is speeding up its exit from the region. You know, in London, George, just tonight, we had the unbearable Douglas Murray attempt to fundraise for Israeli soldiers. And you know why his event was cancelled? His event was cancelled because the workers that worked the venue refused to staff it, even when they were offered triple pay. This is the extent to which people around the world are waking up and very, very clear about this genocidal war and regional war that the United States, Britain, and Israel is launching on the area. But just so people have a little bit of clarity about who Douglas Murray is, let's remember that he worked for many years as a director of the Henry Jackson Society alongside the executive director Alan Mendoza. Simultaneous to that, Mendoza is the president in the UK branch of the largest settlement building organization in Palestine, the JNF, where Netanyahu himself is a patron. Now, Henry Jackson Society historically shares funders with the Friends of the IDF, Illegal Settlements in the West Bank, and Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins. Its international patrons include the former Israeli ambassador to the UN, Dori Gold, Israel lobbyist Natan Sharansky, and former director of the CIA, James Wolseley. At least 2 Henry Jackson Society employees have moved directly from positions within that think tank to the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And you even have a senior research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Gur Tassal Yachin, who was previously head of strategic war games at the Israeli Military Operations Directorate. He was also a spokesman for the Israeli Prime Minister and a media advisor to the Israeli Minister of Defense. Now, you would think that all of that would cast doubt on Douglas Murray's ability to work objectively as a host on Piers Morgan's Talk TV show. But he is actually somebody that has been very close to the Murdoch press historically. And one of the key signatories to the Henry Jackson Society's founding statement was Erwin Stetzler, an advisor to Rupert Murdoch for over 4 decades. So it's no surprise that Murray has been pushed so heavily on Murdoch platforms, including Talk TV. The simple fact is this, George: somebody such as yourself, who has worked tirelessly for the Palestinian cause longer than I've been alive, has been vindicated by these events. Somebody such as me, who's been cancelled right, left, and center, has been vindicated by these events. The Palestinians inside Gaza have more people standing with them than at any point in history of the Palestinian struggle. Israel is more of a pariah, more unpopular all across the global south than it has ever been before.
I mean, to all that and a wonderful overview of what we're up against. And of course, in terms of quantity, we are many and they are few. But they call most, if not all, of the shots. What's your theory of that? Short of Epstein having compromised all of them and videos of all of them being in the vaults in Tel Aviv, and I'm sure that that's not the case. What's the reason why you simply cannot prosper in politics in Britain, France, the Netherlands, the United States, unless you are bowing the knee more deeply than any George Floyd protester ever bent the knee? You got to bend both knees to Israel to in any way, never mind prosper, even survive. How do you account for that?
Well, across these decades, George, Israel has been able to insinuate itself inside the security arrangements of both Britain and the United States more than any time previously. There are really a myriad of ways in which Britain carries out services for the Israelis and the Israelis carry out services for the British. They outsource to each other different ways of managing people. And also, Israel is perceived as the global leader in management and manipulation and spying on of people because it has the guinea pig population, the laboratory of occupied Palestine. That's not something that other nations can easily obtain, and Israel has had it for such a long time. It's developed mechanisms of surveillance and control, which since 2012 and the Netanyahu policy that Calculus Tech reported was enacted, it has been exporting the quote unquote genius of Unit 8200 and Unit 81 within the Israeli military outside to other countries in the guise of private companies. This is one of the things of the neoliberal era, George. Key state functions, as you know better than me, were outsourced to all manner of people. Even if you look at London's water system, now this is an absolutely crazy one that took place in 2011. London's water system is monitored by an Israeli company based in Tel Aviv called Tadaku. These individuals are alumni of the Talpot unit within the Israeli military. Now, they receive information about London's water system and then pass it on to Thames Water, not the other way. And now this has been covered by the BBC. Everything I'm saying is repeated what the BBC has covered. I'm not necessarily attributing malign intent by that arrangement, but what I'm merely stating is that the neoliberal era has opened up the space for these alumni of Israeli state institutions to have private companies that carry out the state functions in other countries. And in my personal opinion, when you have a state that is plausibly accused of genocide, you should be very careful about what aspects of state function you outsource. But ultimately, George, we have a few ways of fighting back. One of them is Palestine Action, which has successfully caused 77 investors to pull out of Elbit Systems across the years of its involvement. It's caused the British Ministry of Defence to cancel £280 million worth of contracts with Elbit Systems. It shut down 2 Elbit Systems sites in this country. But another way to fight back is to put you in Parliament in Rochdale at the end of this month. We need you in Parliament kicking their arse, the way you kicked their arse in the United States, the way you kicked their arse at Oxford Union, the way you kicked their arse on Sky News. We need that energy back in Parliament. So I would encourage everybody watching this, especially our brothers and sisters in Rochdale, to get out there and support George Galloway. This is not the Labour Party of Keir Hardie. It's not even the Labour Party of Ramsay MacDonald or Harold Wilson. This is the Labour Party of Tony Blair. We need to show resistance, and we need George Galloway in Parliament this year.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Lowkey, for a wonderful interview that will travel far, I believe. Thank you for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows.